alto como el solo y jala como un campeón. Tracción delantera, independiente suspensión. Toyota Corolla.
Hey there! In the past few years, Toyota and video games have had a pretty odd relationship. From appearing in almost every game with licensed cars, to only being in Gran Turismo, to then having some questionable tweets, before finally returning to everything not named Need for Speed. However, Toyota has been more involved with gaming than you may think, having developed a few of their own throughout the 90s and 2000s. I'm going to be checking out as many as I could find. Let's see what games are so good, they got the Toyota seal of approval.
Nets presents.
Toyota Nets Racing asks one simple question, or rather, I asked this question. What the heck is a Nets? Well, it's a chain of Toyota dealers in Japan, which aim to prepare a full lineup of products that radiate an image of youth and energy. So if I had to guess, creating games was a part of that strategy. This game was only available through dealerships, and was given to people who went in and test drove a car. It was developed by Atlas. Yeah, the very same behind the Touge series of games. The car selection includes then current models, which include the Aristo, Chaser, MR2, Altezza, and Trueno. A couple of cars such as the MR2 and Altezza have different specs available for you to drive. Once you pick from the official paint options, you can head to famous circuits such as Fuji, Suzuki, Suzuki, and Avel. Each track has different time of day and weather options available, which the championship mode makes use of to alleviate repetition, since there are only 3 tracks. Once you get racing, immediately you'll notice that these are the bumpiest racetracks
in the world.
As for the racing, the AI are kinda wonky, and will crash into each other, go off course. Not sure if that's intentional, but it does keep things interesting, as they do put up a fair fight surprisingly. And no, you can't get ahead by cutting the course. I tried. You probably notice on the bottom left that there's fuel and tire consumption, but you can go ahead and just unnotice those, as they are completely irrelevant. No race, even in the championship mode, is long enough for this to even matter. Which is strange considering there's a pit mechanic allowing you to refuel and change tires. Weirder still, if you pit, you can opt to let the AI take over for you, and finish the race. I've never seen that in any game ever. Not sure why you'd want this, but still, credit for originality. Toyota Nets Racing would actually get a pseudo expansion pack, via the Real Racing Toyota. This would be a standalone release, actually sold in stores under the Simple series of games. If you've been on YouTube long enough, you've probably heard of the series. If not, the Simple series of games are exactly what they say. They're budget games both produced and sold at a low cost. The modern equivalent would be all those asset flips and hentai games you see pushed out on Steam or the eShop. But Real Racing Toyota is actually one of the better ones, if only due to the fact that the game it's built upon has a decent enough foundation. There's new cars including the Celica, Exiv, and
Is that a Supra?
and extra tracks which also feature weather and time of day. In terms of modes though, it's the exact same. Honestly, bumpy tracks and all, these are not bad games to play. Had it a proper career mode, I'd actually recommend it, mostly just due to how lively the AI makes these races. They genuinely do fight you, themselves, and cause some spectacle. These were the first games I played for this, and it's not a bad start. Now Toyota Nets Racing wouldn't be the only game this dealership produced. There's 2 other known games, focused on showcasing individual models. Starting with Nets Altezza, this one at first just seems to contain information of the car, with the only interactivity being viewing the manufacturer paint options. But this game has a little trick up its sleeve. It's the first FMV racing game, at least the first I've ever seen. You can drive an Altezza on a horribly compressed Tsukuba and Mountain Pass. This is incredibly awkward, because you're trying to steer a PNG around the road, but it's a video. So what this ends up being is a guessing game on what this driver did 20 years ago to try and keep your PNG centered. This instructor gives you tips on what to do when, but the only word I ever understood was brake, which probably is the most important word to understand when it comes to driving. You're then scored at the end, giving you something to chase after, if this game convinces you that FMV racing is in fact the future. It's a neat novelty, and I can't say I didn't get some enjoyment out of this, if only because I've never seen something like this before. Finally, there's Nets Vits, arguably one of the most iconic Toyotas ever made, due to a certain series of games. We'll actually get to those later. The intro video for this one just has a bunch of random shots of France, with the Vits appearing in the background, accompanied by the most stereotypical French music. I don't know why, but I find this oddly amusing. You still have information available on the car, and there's more production value put into the presentation, but what's really surprising is the game aspect here. It's a puzzle game. You're plopped into a map and have to reach the endpoint, avoiding dead ends and beating a timer. The wrench in these levels are the traffic lights, which you are forced to stop at. No illegal driving here. So, depending on the timing of the lights, it may end up being faster to take a longer route to avoid sitting and waiting. There's also a fair few levels here as well, with varying difficulty. It's honestly a neat little time waster, and your reward for completion are some of the crustiest JPEGs ever. Now, if you had to pay for this, I wouldn't be as enthusiastic. But since this was a free handout from dealers, not bad.
Watch out, it's here.
Let's go back in time a little further for the next game, Celica GT Rally. As the name implies, you got a Celica and you're going rallying. There's 3 locations, England, Finland, and Mexico. Each with multiple routes and unique weather. For example, Finland snows and Mexico sands. For whatever reason, the controls for this game were entirely mapped to the D-pad, so forward was up, braking was down, and left and right fortunately were still left and right. This threw me off at first, but after some practice it wasn't too bad. I will not be changing my controls in every game to this, but I played worse handling games with more traditional controls. It's a good thing that the draw distance actually allows you to see ahead, because despite there being a co-driver who only says that there's a left or a right coming up, if you play this, you're going to want to turn the sound off, because this could just be an emulation issue, but if it isn't, yikes. Speaking of yikes, good luck troubleshooting this game. After I completed the first stage of the championship, the game just froze at this black screen, and I couldn't progress. I did this stage multiple times, I tried different settings, but still a black screen. Fortunately, I was able to at least see the other environments, which always have weather enabled if you choose to play them via quick race. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the wipers to work, despite pressing literally every button. And since the sound was off to preserve my eardrums, I ended up doing a blind driving challenge run, which was actually fun on the Mexico stage, but impossible in Finland. You don't have to worry about damage or anything, nor are you competing with other drivers. Though the game is literally from 1990, so I can't fault it too much. From what I played, it's pretty solid. I doubt there were many options for rally games then, and Celica GT isn't a bad game. The car is controllable, yet still has its limits, and if the first stage is anything to go by, the other tracks should get the job done, making this a decent package for the time. Apparently there's over 30 routes. Imagine, it's 1999. You walk into your local Toyota dealer to take part in the yearly Toyota-thon ritual. You see one that catches your eye and think, it's perfect. I need to spec this immediately. You're in luck, because Sega has your back with the Dory Catch series. Basically, for a time in Japan, dealerships had Dreamcasts on the showroom floor, loaded with these games that allowed you to spec and view a car of your choice. Sadly, only 2 of these have been preserved, but let's start with Land Cruiser. You get a demo of it shredding through the desert. For some reason though, there's no text. That's definitely an emulator issue, but it would have been in Japanese, so not like its absence makes any real difference for me. But this does exactly what you'd expect. Lets you spec out a Land Cruiser of the time with all the available options. There's also these informational videos in here, which go over various aspects of the car and demonstrate the vehicle's capabilities. Once you've spec'd it out, you can view that same initial demo with your configuration. This kind of thing has now been replaced with online configurators, but the software still has some charm to it. Next is the Toyota Fun Cargo. Presentation is more colorful to match the vibe of the car, and the pictures here are amazing. Look at these. They are trying to convince you to live and work outside of your Fun Cargo. For good reason too, because you had options speccing this out back in the day. It really was versatile. There's factory body kits, and why do we not get interiors like this anymore? Come on, this is peak. I really enjoyed going through and seeing all the options available because there are a lot. After specking out my newfound dream car and watching all of the videos, I'm sold on a 1999 Toyota Fun Cargo. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, these are the only 2 Dory Catch titles which have been preserved, which is a shame because I really wanted to build an Estima. Toyota would take a break from commissioning its own games and partner with Polyphony Digital, who you probably know from Omega Boost. This is an early build of Gran Turismo 3, showcasing the Altezza once again, MR2, and the magnificent Vitz. There's 2 tracks, Super Speedway and Trial Mountain. Starting with Super Speedway, I find it funny that despite being a Toyota collab, other brands are still proudly displayed on the track. Like, come on, you couldn't replace these textures? As for the gameplay, it's Gran Turismo 3. There's no info to rifle through or promo videos here, just 2 tracks and 3 cars that made it into the final game. This partnership would continue on to Gran Turismo 4 with the Prius trial version, where we're returning to Tsukuba, this time in 3D. There's 3 different modes, all of which limit you to a single lap, time trial, and 2 races. One of the races has you competing against Prii of the same generation, and the other has you against the previous generation, to really showcase the improvements to performance. I really like this little graphic which shows you what the hybrid system is doing. Reminds me of racing games that have a custom HUD for each car. You also get to see your fuel consumption, but remember, you only get a single lap, so it's not like that's something you need to consider. This trial, unlike the previous, is bundled with an informational video, walking you through every aspect of the then new Prius. This would be the last of the Toyota Polyphony partnership, as Toyota wanted to break free, be independent, and get back to making the games they truly wanted to make.
The graphic pop star diva. I found her.
Who let Toyota cook? Simply named Yaris, this was a free download released on the Xbox Live Arcade. It's one of the most unique racing games I've ever played, but also one of the worst, if not the worst. Apparently the Yaris comes equipped with a tentacle gun, which I suppose is to help with merging, but here, it's to shoot a variety of enemies that look like they're from completely different games, while you auto-drive through these gray corridors, avoiding obstacles with no music. Each level takes 3 to 5 minutes, but they feel like 10 to 20 minutes. It is just constant trigger mashing and horrible VFX. The enemy spawns are ridiculous too. An enemy can spawn behind you and drive right through you, causing you to lose health. There's multiple weapons, but there's no differentiation between them, and these foes take a bunch of hits to go down regardless of what you pick. The camera work is atrocious, constantly shifting with the road, meaning you're always having to adjust your aim. Fortunately, there's no ammo, so you can just spray and pray. One credit though, there is an attempt to provide value in this trash heap, because points actually do mean something, and allow the privilege of different paint, wheels, weapon, and shield upgrades, as well as different Yaris models. They are absolutely not worth the time investment, especially the shield upgrade, because that just means you're in these levels for longer. It's crazy to think that Night Runners is free. The bar is definitely raised over time. Everyone that played this deserves a refund. If you're gonna go out and play any of these games, then Real Racing Toyota would be my only recommendation. There's not a whole lot of content, but the lively AI keeps you on your toes. Manufacturer racing games are a dead subgenre. It's hard to outright call any of them good, mostly because they were made as cheaply as possible, but they remain an interesting part of racing game history, and sometimes attempted to do something unique, for better or for worse.
Toyota, let's go places.